The New Testament records that after Jesus' resurrection, he met Peter and some of the other apostles by the shore of the Sea of Galilee. Tradition identifies this place as Tabgha. But it wasn't the first time that Jesus had met Peter there. 3 years earlier, on the shores of the Sea of Galilee, Simon Peter met Jesus. He and his partners had fished all night long and had caught nothing. But at the words of Jesus, they caught such a large number of fish that it began to break their nets. It's Tabgha, where Simon Peter realizes that Jesus is Lord, and Jesus calls him to become a fisher of men. Throughout Jesus' ministry, we see Simon Peter beside him. Jesus gives him the name Peter, which means the rock. He is a part of Jesus' inner circle. He is a pillar in the church. He even walks on water with Jesus right out here. But Peter is also the one who Jesus predicts will deny him. We see this prediction in the Garden of Gethsemane before Jesus is arrested and he's put on trial in Matthew chapter 26, verse 34. It says this, Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Afterwards, Jesus is arrested. Peter follows at a distance trying to observe without being noticed, but people recognize him, right? They had seen him with Jesus. In verse 69, we continue to read. Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came up to him and said, "You also were with Jesus, the Galilean." But he denied it before them all, saying, "I do not know what you mean." In verse 71, and when he went out to the entrance, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." And again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." After a little while, the bystanders came by and said to Peter, "Certainly you too are one of them, for your accent betrays you." Then he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, "I do not know the man." And immediately the rooster crowed. And Peter remembered the saying of Jesus, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and he wept bitterly. Let me ask you, if you could pick one event in your life that you could go back and do over, which would it be? You know, if you're anything like me, it would be tough to choose just one. We've all done things that have left us in deep regret. We mourn those things. And while we can't change the past, we also can't ignore it, nor do we need to. Jesus predicted Peter would deny him 3 times. And what was Peter's reaction? He promised that he would never deny Christ. Rather, he claimed that he would be willing to die with him. After his failure, Peter felt the weight of his sin and wept bitterly. How often do fear and temptation hide the words of Christ from us, only to bring them to mind immediately after we fail? Haven't we all done this, though? Haven't we all in some way turned from the Lord? In the days between Jesus' death and resurrection, I'm sure Peter's mind wandered back through the years when Jesus gave instruction to his disciples. Jesus' words probably echoed in his mind, I would think. Like Matthew 10:33 that says, "But whoever denies me before men, I also will deny before my Father who is in heaven." Peter must have thought, that's it, I'm out. There's no forgiveness for somebody like me. I'm done. But then, early Sunday morning, after the crucifixion, a small group of women went to Jesus' tomb and found an angel who said this in Mark chapter 16, verses 6 through 7. "You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. Go, tell his disciples and Peter." And Peter. A personal note from God to Peter. How gracious of our God to do that. God knew Peter's special need for hope. But God wasn't finished extending grace to Peter. Now, back on the shores of the Sea of Galilee in John chapter 21, we find Peter returning to what he knew. And it's human nature to return to what you've always known, what you used to count on. We're all vulnerable to the lies of Satan. And he tells us we're not good enough, we're not strong enough, not brave enough, that we don't know enough, that we've done the unforgivable. So what does Peter do? Well, he returns to the boat in the Sea of Galilee. He returns to his former life thinking that's all he has left. John chapter 21, verses 3 through 8 says this, Simon Peter said to them, I'm going to go fishing. And they said to him, well, we'll go with you. So they went out and they got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just as the day was breaking, like right now, Jesus stood on the shores, yet the disciples didn't know who he was, didn't know Jesus. Jesus said to them, children, do you have any fish? And they answered him, no. He said, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. So what did they do? They cast it. And now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved, therefore said to Peter, it is the Lord. When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work, and he threw himself into the sea. The other disciples came in the boat, and they were dragging the net full of the fish, for they were not far from land, but about 100 yards off. There's a lesson that we can learn from Peter's reaction to realizing the man on the shore was Jesus. Look, he didn't wait to row the boat to shore. In dramatic Peter-like fashion, he threw himself into the water and swam to reach Jesus. Despite Peter's wrongs, despite returning to his former life, when he realized that Jesus was there, he couldn't wait to be by his side. When the others reached the shore with the catch in tow, they found a charcoal fire with fish already being cooked. The only other time the Greek term for charcoal fire appears in the Bible, interestingly enough, occurs in John chapter 18, verse 18, where we read that Peter warmed himself in Caiaphas' courtyard in Jerusalem at a charcoal fire. And then out of fear, he denied even knowing Jesus. And now Peter sits by another charcoal fire. Big life lessons can sometimes start that way, back at the beginning, in the exact same place that you started. Maybe even at rock bottom. Peter had assured Jesus that he would never deny him. And now, Peter's betrayal of his own promises will be challenged by Jesus. John chapter 21, verses 15 through the first part of verse 17 says, when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, feed my lambs. He said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, tend my sheep. He said to him a third time, Simon Peter, do you love me? And Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? The implication of being asked the same question 3 times is not lost on Peter. He understands that Jesus is not asking because he doesn't know. He's asking to prove a point. You know, Peter's 3 denials are being countered with 3 affirmations from Jesus. But Jesus won't leave Peter in sorrow. This is a moment of repentance and restoration. Peter replies in the last part of verse 17, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. The last time Peter looked Jesus in the eye, Peter had failed. Now he looked into the eyes of the resurrected Lord and saw forgiveness. Here, on the shores of the Sea of Galilee, Jesus challenged Peter to start over with him, as if to say, God is not done with you, Peter. Return to what I called you to when we first met. Imagine that moment. Grace, forgiveness, reconciliation, peace. Jesus took Simon Peter back to Tabgha, to the place where their relationship first began. And Jesus reinstated Peter and reminded him of his purpose in life. Just because Peter had blown it didn't mean that it was the end of the line. Instead, it was the beginning. And the same is true for you and for me. Sometimes it's helpful to start over. Not to get saved again, there's no need for that, but to remind ourselves that the essence of our relationship with Jesus is found in his question to Peter. Do you love me? Do you love me? And maybe that's where you need to start. Jesus is ready to extend his unconditional love to you. When we hit rock bottom, or we're at a crossroads in life, or we're just beginning and starting out, we need to run to Jesus and be reminded that He is loving, He is faithful, He's forgiving, and He has a purpose for our lives. Yes, you have failed, and you will fail again, but Jesus won't abandon you. He meets us exactly where we are, extending grace, extending forgiveness and restoration and purpose. Remember that God is not done with you.